Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we're going to talk about subjects that are important to all of us. Let's start with physician shortage. How important is that? But guess what? New mortgage rules, and that will certainly have a big effect on home buying, and we'll get to those subjects after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, let's start with new mortgage rules. Joining me to chat about that is and more is Stacy Garrity. She is the Pennsylvania Treasurer, elected to a 4-year term. I think I got that right.
You did, and it's great to be here with you, Terry.
Yeah, well, it's always good to have you on the program. All right, let's start out with proposals for new mortgage rules. I mean, given the economy right now, given the fact that prices are going up for homes and other purchases, buildings, the fact of the matter is mortgages matter to everyone.
They do. And so this is a policy by the Federal Housing Finance Agency. And what the policy does, it increases fees on home buyers with good credit and a big down payment. And unfortunately, it feels like just another example of President Biden and his administration just chipping away at the American dream, just like they're trying to hurt people who play by the rules with the student loans.
So what you're basically saying is that depending on your income, your wealth, I'll put it more broadly, you could pay more if you want to take out a mortgage to buy a home. I'll put it that way. Is that a yes or no?
That's kind of correct, but it's basically if you have a good credit score and you put, for example, a 20% down payment down, you're going to pay more for your mortgage. And it would be, so I'll give you an example. If you had a $400,000 mortgage, the cost would be about $40 a month, which doesn't sound a lot, but Terry, if you had a 30-year mortgage, that's over $14,000, and that is enough to buy a car or pay for a semester of tuition.
Well, where does this stand right now? Is this in effect right now?
Yes, it's in effect. It took effect May 1st. People are just starting to learn about it. Because it wasn't enacted by legislation, the process really wasn't transparent. It was a policy. So the good news is that they could get rid of it immediately.
Yeah, I mean, other than hearing it from your staff before you came on the program, I was absolutely unaware, and I think I pay a good bit of attention to federal as well as state matters. And when did it go into effect?
So it went into effect May 1st.
So it's now just going into effect, and the impact hasn't really been felt yet by the folks, correct?
Correct. So it'll be for new home buyers, and like you said, it's really not a good time with high interest rates.
Correct. And
the housing market is already cooling off, and didn't we learn anything from 2008? Right. So the timing's just awful.
Has there been any reaction in Congress? I would think that there would be reaction, and maybe not maybe a bipartisan reaction to it.
There's absolutely a bipartisan reaction. Democrats as well as Republicans think it's a terrible idea. There are 4 bills that are out there, and 2 of our congressmen have signed on to them. We don't know if they'll move, but there are 4 bills.
Okay. And how long is this program scheduled to remain in effect? Or is it just
They've changed the policy now. So again, what my message to the American people is, you did the right thing, you played by the rules, and my message to the Biden administration is get rid of this policy immediately.
All right. One of the things, let's switch subjects a minute. One of the things that you've talked about is something called 529 day. Well, what's 529?
So I know you know very well what 529 accounts are, but it's the 529 College and Career Savings Plan, and it's really a fantastic program. And so May 29th is PA 529 Day.
And so explain what it actually is.
So what it does, it allows families to basically save for their child's education, or actually any child that's in your in your life. You can open up an account, save for their education. It has tremendous tax benefits. And it can be used not only for four-year degrees, but for community college, for technical schools, apprenticeships, some K through 12 expenses. So it's really fantastic because the earnings grow without tax implications. Mm-hmm. If you live in Pennsylvania, it doesn't impact your financial aid eligibility or inheritance tax.
So basically what you're saying is that there are advantages to a 529 account that you would not have in what I'll call traditional savings.
Exactly. So again, the tax-free withdrawals for qualified expenses, it's tax-free investment growth. It's really fantastic because the assets in the PA 529 account don't affect a student's eligibility when it comes to applying or receiving financial aid. So it really is a fantastic program.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about something that you refer to as Pennsylvania money math, if I got that correct.
Money match.
Money match, okay, and we'll get to that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, my guest is Stacy Garrity. She is the Pennsylvania Treasurer. And we're going to talk about Pennsylvania Money Match, but before we do, you have a promotion for the 529 Day.
I do. So 529 Day, it's a promotion. It's to celebrate the PA 529 College and Career Savings Program. But what we want to do is get more families to take that first step to start saving on their own. So from now until the end of the month, so until May 31st, people that open a new 529 plan and contribute at least $10 are going to be eligible for different prizes. Oh, yeah. And the top prize is $5,290. Surprise, surprise. Right. And that, of course, would be enough to cover a year's tuition at a Pennsylvania community college. But Terry, if a child was born in 2019 or after, we have an even better news because they're already eligible for $100 in their Keystone Scholars account. And they can link that to the new GSP account in the 529 plan.
There you go. All right, PA Money Match. First of all, what is it and how does it work? First of all, what is it?
Okay, so Pennsylvania Money Match, it was introduced as Senate Bill 24. So that is going to get unclaimed property to Pennsylvanians faster than before. So right now you have to go in if you have unclaimed property and you have to fill out a form. And that's by statute. So this would enable Treasury to proactively send the money to the people for accounts that are $5,000 or less. It has to be a single owner, and the person has to be alive, and of course we have to verify the identity. So that's a fantastic thing because especially right now in this high inflationary environment, we would be able to get money out to people that could really use it.
Yeah. One always possibility when you talk about programs like this is there's a word, fraud. So what do you do about fraud detection?
So we're not too concerned about fraud because there are 14 other states that already do this. They have not reported any major instances of fraud. Also, I have an investigative unit, and so if there are instances of fraud, we go right out and investigate those. But also, we take a lot of steps to verify the identity before we would send the check out.
And this has a substantial return to the folks in the state, correct?
Yes. So we estimate the first year we would return about $10 million. And then it should grow to about $20 million a year, which would help over 6,000 Pennsylvanians. if you assume an average claim of $1,600.
Yeah, sure.
So it would be a really good thing.
All right.
So it's out of the Senate, or the Senate Finance Committee, so it's moving. So we're very excited about it.
All right. I'm giving you an assignment. Your assignment is when you have programs like this, you've got to give us a call and come back on the program and explain it to the folks.
I'll take that assignment.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. We're going to talk about a number of things dealing with doctors, with physicians. Let's start with the physician shortage. We'll get to that with the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, as I indicated before, we're going to talk a lot about the scope of practice in healthcare and physician shortage. My guest is the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society, Dr. Wilson Jackson. Dr. Jackson, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Wonderful to be here.
All right, I'll tell you something. Getting in to see a physician is not an easy task these days. Or maybe I ought to say assignment.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that there is, and this has been reported, and I want you to amplify it, if you will, not just, let's talk about physician shortage, but it goes through the healthcare community. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got shortages throughout the community of healthcare and throughout our state and nationally. To start with the physicians, there's a physician shortage, not just in primary care, which is a huge challenge in terms of access points getting into care, but also medical and surgical specialties as well. It's been a challenge for patients to get timely appointments with their providers. A couple drivers behind that. One, some physicians have taken early retirement. One of the other areas of concern is something we call physician burnout. There's been a palpable challenge of physicians trying to maintain the same energy towards their practice. COVID had an impact on physicians. So physicians were leaving the workforce, and it's been an impact. And patients, you'll hear this throughout their comments, that they've been challenged trying to get access into care. Beyond physicians, we got nurse shortages. We have other support people within the healthcare team. Surgical techs, pulmonary techs, respiratory therapists, physical therapists. I mean, there's throughout the whole continuum of care, it's been a challenge.
Yeah. One of the other things that we talk about, and it needs some explanation, and that is referred to as, quote, scope of practice, end quote, scope of practice. What are we talking about when that terminology
so scope of practice refers to the providers providing care to a patient, and the way the medical side, Pennsylvania medical side, views the scope of practice is defining that as whoever that healthcare provider is, working within their skill set, within their training and their experience. Physicians have had extensive amount of training. They have up to 15,000, 17,000 hours of training before they're fully licensed to provide care. So they have broad experience and training for their practice of medicine. Other healthcare providers have different levels of training. So the scope of practice is defined as a health provider working within the scope of their training and experience.
I got it, yeah. I'll tell you, something else is that physicians are now part of a team. I mean, when I go in, I see 2 or 3 people before the physician actually shows up, to see me and to chat with me about why I'm in there. And that has really grown enormously in the last several years.
Yeah. So the healthcare team is absolutely critical to providing good patient care. Not just the physician, but the whole team, from the person coming in and checking the patient in, the nurses, whether it's a procedure, there's a tech component to it, the surgical techs. And there's a whole comprehensive care team out there that, in a larger system, works to put the patient central to that whole care experience. And that's where we feel at the Pennsylvania Medical Society, the physician needs to be in charge of that team. Someone needs to be in charge of that patient, central to the whole care experience. And we feel the physician needs to be central to that team, and particularly the decision-making around the patient's care.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we all face as patients is, what should we be asking our healthcare provider? What kind of information should we provide? Let's run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about that and more, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, I'm chatting with Dr. Wilson Jackson. He is the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. We're talking about a number of aspects of the role that physicians and other healthcare providers get into with us. All right, so you walk into a physician's office. What kinds of questions should a patient ask their healthcare provider?
Yeah, great question. And there's a kind of range of healthcare literacy amongst the public. I think really important is advanced preparation for that visit. You write down the questions, what's on a person's mind, share those questions with your family and have those questions prepared. But with the patient visit, I think it's appropriate to the patient to understand where their care decision-making is being channeled through. And we feel physicians should be central to that decision-making. So if a patient's not necessarily seeing a physician at that point of care, I think it's appropriate to ask, who is the physician overseeing that care? We think the physician really should be the team lead on that whole healthcare team. Yeah. And the patients, I think, should ask those questions about where the physician's role and voice is in that decision-making.
That's a good point, yeah. I mean, many times I understand that you may go into a physician's office and see a physician assistant, not the actual physician, I guess, depending on the nature of what brought you into the physician's office, healthcare office in the first place.
Absolutely, and the nurse practitioners, physician assistant, and other providers are offered terrific and wonderful care, and they have broadened access points for patients, which is further what we need. But the oversight and the review, having the physician oversight and review available to them is we think is important to maintain high quality patient care and patient trust around in terms of the whole system around their care.
Yeah. Well, there has to be an understanding within a physician's office about the roles that everybody plays, the physician and the nurse practitioners in particular, but it involves the entire staffing of a healthcare provider.
Yes, in the state of Pennsylvania, we have a collaborative agreement. So between a physician and a nurse practitioner, for example, there's an agreement that structures the range of, rather the latitude of what that nurse practitioner can do within that. And that's an individual agreement between the physician overseeing the nurse practitioner. We think that's really, really important and essential to have the physician oversight in terms of the care of that patient.
Yeah, now when you say an agreement, is that internal or is that in law? Is that in?
Yeah, currently the agreement is required by law, but the specifics are very much independent. So nurse practitioners has the ability to kind of look for a position where a collaborative agreement is more in line with what they might be looking for. But there's a fair amount of latitude in how that agreement is written.
Yeah. And that's a really big change, because I can remember just a few years ago going in and you immediately saw a physician. I mean, you may have had to answer some questions about what medications you're on, what supplements you're on, what other aspects of your health care were relevant. Always one about your sleep at night. How are you sleeping well? How long do you sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And so this nurse practitioner role has really expanded over the last decade.
Appropriately, there's more graduates of nurse practitioner schools out there, and they've been a critical part of the care team in the delivery of health care throughout the state and the country, for that matter. And we value their experience. We value their collaborative agreement with us. But we think at the end of the day, the medical society feels the physician should be, or the patient should be, completely central to that whole care experience.
Yeah.
And the physician needs to be the team lead on that patient, central to the whole care experience. Whether it's a simple, straightforward episode of care, where it's some longitudinal level of care, they both need to have physician oversight there.
But would you agree that there's been an expansion of the role that the nurse practitioner plays in medicine?
They've had an absolutely expanded role in terms of kind of where they are employed and where they've been working. Some gravitate towards primary care or pediatrics, primary care in that area, some surgical specialties, some medical subspecialties. So they've found it a critical and important place in that whole care continuum of the patient's care. But again, we feel it's critical the physician needs to have oversight of that patient's decision making.
Yeah, back to the question that I started with, which we'll end with, and that is this critical shortage of healthcare practitioners. I mean, it seems to me that if you've got to wait 6-8 weeks to see a physician, now you can obviously always go to a hospital, to an urgent care center or someplace like that, but that's a very serious problem, it seems to me.
It is, and it's going to take a long-term solution to resolve that. But there's a physician shortage in many ways, in many parts of the country. So putting resources to expand the number of physicians out there coming out of graduate programs and residencies and fellowships. Nurse practitioners have been expanding their enrollment. Same with physician assistants and expanding their enrollment. So we do need help, more care providers, particularly as the baby boomers are moving into that. Is
it across all specialties, or is it in some specialties more than others?
Yeah, the worst, I think in my mind, the areas of most critical need are primary care and mental health. And that's where I think we really need
primary care and mental health.
Yeah.
But often a general practitioner will refer you to a specialist, and then you got to get in to see the specialist as well.
Yeah. And we have subspecialty care shortages as well, whether it's in a medical subspecialty or surgical specialty. It's a whole different range of access points there.
Yeah, and that's not likely to get much better anytime soon.
We need to mint more providers. I think at a national level, there's more awareness around that, and I think there's efforts to try and fix that.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.